Hi everyone, I have a To-Do MVC app and it uses console log to print messages. It prints a message at the start and it prints a message after some time passes. The code is in the index. Here's a console log rendering app at the beginning and 1 second later running app code. So let's confirm that we are calling console log at the beginning of application. Our test visits the page, creates a console log spy and gives it an alias. And then inside the test, we get this alias, which returns a SynOnSpy object, and we assert that it was called exactly once with an argument rendering app. The test passes, and it finishes so quickly that by the time 1 second later the console log is called again, the test is already done and everything is green. Imagine I want to confirm that when I enter new to do, that application is using console log again, like it does right here. I can add a test, logs message when adding add to do. And notice because every alias is reset before each test, I have to create an alias again because this alias has been destroyed. But we're staying on the same page and we are sorting that when we interact through the UI and adding do, then the log exactly once. Notice this is green. Again, notice where the message after 1 second appears running app code. What's happening? Well, we're not resetting the test, right? We are visiting the page in a before hook, so it executes just once before every test, well, before all the tests start, right? So it doesn't visit the page every test. It only visits it once. So we continue working with the application, and that hook, right, keeps running. Maybe application started long-running network calls that come back after 1 second. Maybe it sets an interval, maybe timeout. So in all these cases, whatever is started here can accidentally affect the second test, and I'll demonstrate. Imagine this delay is not 1000 milliseconds, but instead it's a 100. Will our test pass? All of a sudden they fail because running app code comes in during the second test unexpectedly, right? This is not something that the second test expected. Sometimes this value is right on the edge of sometimes failing and sometimes passing, right? So this fails, but let's say 250 fails, 350 maybe. Okay, so passes, passes. Maybe I need slightly short, maybe 300 milliseconds will do the trick and show how this test can sometimes pass, sometimes fail. Okay, so this is a typical value. Sometimes the test fails, sometimes it passes because this value was right at the border of two tests kind of leaking into each other. So what we need to do, and this is the best practice, instead of using before, use before each. Because by loading the page, it will stop the previous code from executing. But even better, I want to demonstrate something else. So I'm going to say before each. We don't need to create a second log because this will recreate it. Now, the problem here is that we now have this rendering app call in the beginning, all right? So somehow we need to reset all the test. So we can say get the log and invoke the synon method history, reset history. Okay, so now this is much better. But even better is to really not even visit the same page, but visit a blank page. Because then everything will stop, even if you're not doing the visit right away, because sometimes you could do some other commands, right? Like login and so on. So the visit is not the first one. So here's what I recommend doing before each test if you really want to separate one test from another. So we're gonna, instead of just visiting, we're gonna visit about blank page. Now you might ask, like, what is that? Well, if you go to the browser, right, and you go to about blank, right, this is like neutral page that doesn't correspond to any page that you visited before or were at before. So this is very useful because that will stop all JavaScript from executing. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work that well because if we look at what it does, it doesn't really visit about blank. Notice it says localhost 3000/about blank because it doesn't think that this is a valid URL. So the way to visit this is a little trickier. What you want to do is get the window object. You'll get a window object and then set location href as if you typed into the URL. Okay, so notice what happens here. So right here, the window page loaded. Notice it's completely blank. And when we go to the second test, right, notice this was aborted. So all network calls that the previous app did, they will be completely disregarded. All JavaScript will stop, right? And you will be on a blank page, and then you're visiting whatever you want to visit. And you can start, and no JavaScript callbacks from previous tests will be running at a particular moment. And even better is to make sure to run it the very first thing, right? So I suggest you will move it to the support file because the support file runs before the spec file. So this callback will be scheduled to be the very first thing your application is doing before each test, visiting the blank page.